The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the kid that always whistles when instead of talking, that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are he, him as well.
Yeah, so as we mentioned last week, again, we're watching a movie called Monster Mash. This one from 5 years after the previous one.
In the year 2000.
This thing could be, I mean, it is so unlike the last one, which is good. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much different in every conceivable way.
Every conceivable way.
But it's a lot of fun. This one, it's a weird one, but I enjoyed it.
It's weird in that it's out of time. Like, it's like it shouldn't take place in the time it does. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it does seem like it should have taken place in 95 versus 2000, just because of all the references that are in it.
Oh, definitely.
So, let's get this party started.
Yeah, so we open, like, we've got sort of like a freeze frame of, like, our trio of monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman, and they're kind of arranged in, like, the Bohemian Rhapsody pose, and then there's, like, a Monster Mash logo underneath it with, like, lightning striking and everything, and then we see this vulture that is, like, flying past, like, a spooky castle on a hill.
Yeah, I called it our Flappy Buzzard.
Yeah. And he, like, swoops down through a graveyard, like, that he's just, like, you can tell he's excited he found something, and then he swoops back up, and you hear this voice talking to him, and it turns out, yeah, and it turns out that he's picked up a dog's skull, and the dog's skull is still alive.
Yeah, and he's going to be our narrator.
Yeah, pretty much.
Amazing.
And so his, like, he kind of scares the buzzard and gets dropped, and then falls down and, like, whistles, and his body comes, like, walking over, and they kind of reconnect.
Now, so did you get this as well? So he introduces himself as Yorick because, you know, that's funny because he's a skull.
Yeah.
But later on, near the end of the movie, Frank calls him Bonegi.
Yeah, because I definitely caught Yorick here, but then I did catch somebody calling him something else later on, and was kind of confused. But right. Bonegi is good.
So is the head Yorick and the body's Bonegi?
I hope so. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, but I'm not expecting it. This is a DIC Entertainment production, so I'm not putting a lot of hopes. From 2000, by the way. DIC from 2000, totally different from DIC 1980s, 89. So,
right.
Yeah, they're on their way out at this point, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, so he kind of introduces himself and says that he lives in this castle with his three masters, and then we kind of get, like, shots of each of the monsters as he sort of introduces them. We've got Frank, made of assembled parts, Drac.
Oh, can I give the whole spiel that he drops?
Yeah.
I'm going to try my Karloff impression because I think that went over well last time. Frank, a wretched creation of parts on earth from the darkest depths of the graveyard. Drac, dashing bloodthirsty tyrant from Romania, a creature of the night. Wolf, once an ordinary man, now cursed by the full moon and transforms into a hideous, tormented beast, howling at the moon. Okay, that's it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know if it was, but it was, you know. That's the longest I've gone as a Karloff. All right.
So yeah, and as he's kind of doing that, we see each of the monsters kind of like doing their thing, and then after with Wolf, you see him as a normal man, and he transforms as Yorick's describing that, and then he kind of looks out the window and sees like a pitchfork and torch mob approaching the castle, and so the whole like trio rushes downstairs, pops out of the door of the castle, and scares everybody away.
Yeah, and then we get this whole thing about they were once the terrors of the countryside, but now, after they've become famous, life's just one big party.
Right. And so then we get to hear the Monster Mash. Which I thought was kind of funny. So like last week, we watched this movie that actually starred Bobby Boris Pickett, and they just used the original recording and didn't do anything new with it. And then here in this like kind of, low tier animation, they like re-recorded the song with this Yorick voice, singing the song instead. And like even like there's like different drums in it. There's like a drum machine track or something. But yeah, it's like a whole brand new recording.
Yeah, oh yeah. And like I said, we're going to get a couple more of those at the end.
Oh yeah, yeah. The ending is a lot of fun. But yeah, so then, he's singing the song. He's also riding around on a roller coaster that sort of like swoops in and out of the castle so that he can describe, so the scenes kind of play out and you see the stuff from the song, So you've got like Dracula with a bunch of vampires, in the spooky bedroom where the vampires feast and all that.
The master bedroom. Yeah, and then we have the ghouls in their graves. But also, at some point, they get on the D&D ride. Like from the D&D cartoon, like that is almost the same art.
It probably is. They probably had like concept art, and they were just like, "Well, this works. It's already made."
Draw a couple frames of this skeleton dog on a roller coaster, just riding in this dragon's mouth.
So we also there's skeleton girls with doo-wop hairdos that are singing the backing vocals. So we're seeing a lot of party footage with the monsters, but we also get like some black and white footage of these cartoon characters that are more traditional Universal style stuff going on, sort of mixed in.
Yeah, that's to allude to their more scary era.
Yeah. So we're kind of getting this contrast where it's like now they're in color, they're modern, they're having fun. It's sort of true to life. People nowadays don't look at like Frankenstein as like horror. It's a monster movie. It's fun, it's light. It's not gonna like keep you up at night. So that's kind of the contrast we're dealing with here. But we get the old black and white footage that is played up for scares, and then you've got the present tense where they're rocking to this silly song.
Yeah, exactly. And we also, after the end of we also get in Igor. But it's a really cool design, in my opinion. It's almost reminiscent of Igor, but and it's also. Have you played any Persona? Do you know Igor from Persona? It's weird in that it's very reminiscent of that. So you should check that out.
What it reminded me of, which I think is probably an even more obscure pull, is there was a hunchback character in the Ghostbusters cartoon.
Yep.
And more specifically, I just remember the action figure. I had it when I was a kid. It had the thing where it had like chains that connected, and you like squeezed his legs together, and his hands would spread apart and break the chains.
Oh yeah.
And like I think his mouth like came open, like it looked like he was like screaming and stuff. But yeah, it had a similar kind of like look to it. Oh yeah. I see this Igor character from Persona too. Yeah.
Right. Now I'm gonna look up that character because it bothers me because they were always in that. They were always in the old commercials, right?
Yeah.
Pimping out the action figures.
Yeah, it's funny. I can find pictures of the action figure and not actually pictures from the show. So it may never have actually even been in the show. It may have just been a toy.
Well, yeah, that's definitely something that happened in the 80s, right? It's like they make these really awesome characters, but you will never, ever, ever see them in the show. Maybe the background character in one scene or a really boring episode. But
yeah, I was a diehard Ninja Turtles collector as a kid, and they were terrible about that. There were so many characters that never actually appeared in the show.
Oh yeah, one of my favorites was oh, what was his name? He was a gecko.
Mondo Gecko.
Mondo Gecko. He did appear in like he became not really a big character, but kind of big in the end. But like they released this character in like the second season of the show, and then they went like 4 or 5 seasons later until he actually shows up. It's like
I'm sure it was like, yeah, well, it's he's become popular as a toy, so we'll put him in the show and
all right, I can't
sell
a
few more toys.
Yeah, right, exactly. I can't find this character, but I know what you mean because in the cartoon they just like they squeezed the legs together and then he broke the chains. I think is what happened.
Yeah. So once the song ends, we kind of get back to Yorick, and he kind of further emphasizes this whole deal that like the monsters aren't really striking fear in mortal hearts anymore. Mm-hmm. They became entertainers, but they missed their former glory. And so then we see this like reference to like the David Letterman stupid human tricks thing, but it's the monsters doing
stupid monster tricks.
Yeah, and they're basically doing like a cheerleader pyramid, and Wolf's on top juggling jack-o'-lanterns, right? And then like they all fall, and a jack-o'-lantern lands on each of their heads.
Right. Oh, by the way, we didn't mention this. I don't think any of the other. I think we checked this, and there weren't too many actual like big names, except for one that is Wolf. That is Scott McNeil in one of his early roles. I think like he had probably just started playing Piccolo in Dragon Ball Z. For those of you who are fans. But also, we got some other people. We had some other monsters watching the stupid monster tricks, and they're not happy. They're not happy by what they see.
Yeah, they're really frustrated. This is an embarrassment to monster kind. Mm-hmm. So the monsters we see now, this is where you get into like the references, that like you said feel a little bit more 90s than 2000s.
Yeah.
We've got an alien that very closely resembles a xenomorph.
Right. It's almost like a mix of Xenomorph and Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, because it does have like weirder, like the mouth is a little more Audrey, and we'll eventually learn that it is called the Alien Eater.
Right, the Alien Eater, and then of course we got Chicky, which is a little doll that's obviously a reference to Chucky.
Yeah, they just made like a female version of Chucky. Probably before Bride of Chucky existed. Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that was before Bride of Chucky.
Yeah, Bride of Chucky was 2002 or 2004.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, most notably, we have Freddy D. Spaghetti.
Freddy D. Spaghetti. Literally a mashup of Freddy and Jason.
Yeah, he's got a hockey mask. He's got a glove that has various utensils instead of claws. And then he has hair that is like spaghetti, but also kind of snakes.
And also acid. And also comprised of that.
Yeah, he's a weird mashup of things.
There were choices made.
Right. But so they're sort of they're the new guard, they're the horror of the 90s or more the 80s really, but the horror that was popular with adults in the 80s, and by the 90s kids were sort of aware of it, maybe hadn't seen them but like had the posters, well,
listen, by this time Chucky, well, I guess Hot Topic wouldn't really become a big thing for maybe another year or so. No, about 2000 Hot Topic was a big thing. So yeah, this would be probably when you start seeing, Chucky and Bride of Chucky start appearing as like dolls for kids at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, but but they still have a little bit more edge, so they're kind of frustrated that like these old school monsters are not scary anymore, and they're giving monsters a bad name.
Yeah, these guys who are technically old by the time this movie's coming out. Actually, yeah, oddly enough, I think Freddy didn't have a movie since '95.
Yeah. So
and then Jason, I think, when did Jason Goes to Hell come out? That might have just come out. Oh, that was '93. Wow. So Jason wouldn't be in a movie for another like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, Jason X was 01, so
yep.
Yeah. So this is all like they were all sort of like past their prime at that point then, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, obviously going back to Chucky, since we haven't gotten to them yet, or him yet, like he literally wouldn't get revived until Bride of Chucky. Like we had Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, and then pretty much the third one killed the series, and then now we're waiting for Bride of Chucky and then Seed of Chucky, which will once again stall the series until the curse and all that other stuff, and then we've got the TV series. Now he's relevant again, which is weird, but yeah. Sorry for that little diatribe.
No, I mean that's they're making all these references, so this is the time to talk about those.
Right.
But so in this case, they're like, we're gonna have to get to these guys. Like we've got to do something about this.
Yeah, we got to call the Gold Guild together. We got to get the tribunal. We got to get these guys on some legal technicalities that only monsters know.
Yeah, and Freddy's so mad about this that he scoops some spaghetti out of his hair, throws it at the TV, and it eats the TV.
Right. Now, they also pan out, and I want you to look at this with me. The screen that they pan out to, I'm telling you, those are the ironworks from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Okay?
Okay.
Look, check those out, because I'm like, ooh, these people care about horror, because why would you make such a deep cut for like a literally the most underserved movie in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
that's great.
Yep.
So then we cut back to our, original trio's castle. A goblin in a trench coat shows up. He's like a, process server, basically.
Yeah, doing a Peter Lorre impression.
Yeah. And so he's got a summons for failure to scare.
Well, failure to stare. At least that's what Drac thinks. But Dracula loves to stare, so can't be that. Which that's a. I don't know if that's meant to be an adult joke, but it seems like it could be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so then we cut to a courtroom, and we've got all these like various monsters, both in they're in the like the viewing area. The jury is all skeletons, but the courtroom is just full of all kinds of various monsters.
Yeah,
and then
scarecrows and all that stuff. Plant monsters.
Yeah, and then the judge comes in.
What do you mean, the ogre? Or
yeah, his ogre instead of his honor.
Yeah.
And he is a basketball skeleton.
Wearing a Lakers uniform. So who is this? Who died in 2000 that was on the Lakers? Or are they saying the team was dead? Because maybe.
I mean, I guess the joke is like basketball court.
Yeah.
Court, but it's just really random. So he's a skeleton who's like dribbling his own skull in. He is wearing like a powdered wig on.
Yeah. And he's almost making he's almost a reference to the Crypt Keeper, I feel like.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because he's making jokes and he does that almost faux British accent that John Cassier does.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so he calls in the prosecutor and the defense. Mm-hmm. The prosecutor is a very intimidating Grim Reaper, and the defense is a very nerdy mummy. But he did help Mr. Hyde sue Dr. Jekyll for malpractice
for millions of dollars, which I feel like that defeats itself. But what do I know?
So then the prosecutor calls in a few like horror monsters to testify that the classic monsters are past their prime.
Yeah, we get Dr. Decay, who's like a dentist, so mixture of Dr. Giggles and the bad guy from the dentist.
Yeah. And he testifies that Dracula is actually wearing false fangs because he's gotten so old. Then they call in another doctor,
Fred Grogane. So we got a reference to Rogaine, which, fair enough. That was new at the time.
Yeah. And he is a doctor of like hair growth, and testifies that Wolf has several bald spots.
Yeah, I feel like he was also he was doing an impression of somebody, but I didn't write it down, unfortunately. I should have. Oh, no.
Yeah,
he's doing, he's channeling Frank Azaria as Dr. Finkel from the
okay.
Simpsons.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't see Hank Azaria in the credits, so either he did it and was not credited. He was like, "Don't put me on that shit," or somebody else was doing an impression of him.
Yeah. And so then the last witness is a little baby who comes out, pulls Wolf's tail, and then climbs up Frankenstein's body and cuddles with him. So clearly they're not looking very intimidating at this point.
No, unfortunately not. All the kids know them, and basically they've worn their Halloween costumes, so they're all friendly, and they've seen the candy commercials at this time.
Yeah, so instead of like actually just sentencing them, the judge kind of like extends the trial. So their sentence is that they've got 1 day to scare a typical family. If they succeed, everything's fine, but if they fail, it's a life sentence of performing at children's birthday parties.
Well, no, remember the jury was deadlocked because his ogre was like, "Nah, we're just gonna sentence these guys. Come on." And then no, the jury was deadlocked because they're all skeletons. And then they were like, "Yeah, let's. All right, you got 1 day.
Okay,
you got one day or children's birthday parties for eternity for you."
And so they reveal that the family is the Tinklemeisters.
Yep. Which, okay. That's
yeah. And so then we kind of are introduced to the family. They do in some ways seem like a pretty typical family. Like the mom is kind of Midwestern accent a little bit. She's like she's vacuuming. She's not like a neat freak, but she's a mom trying to keep the house clean, straightening things up. There is a great bit where like a fly walks across a window and she like scolds the fly, who then like comes back and wipes up his footprints.
Yeah, she browbeats it to do some cleaning for her.
Yeah,
fair enough, man.
And the dad is a professional dog groomer, which will come up again a couple of times. And then the kids are a little weird, but I guess kids are weird, so that is typical in a way. Like the daughter, she doesn't really have like a single thing that's her like archetype. She's just kind of a weird kid. She's kind of dressed a little bit hippie-ish in that way that was popular in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Right, yeah, that channeling of the old hippies with the hemp bandanas and all, or not the hemp bandanas, the hemp necklaces and wristbands.
Yeah,
and all that.
Tie-dye and all that, which I think is back again on its third or fourth round at this point.
It'll never go away.
And then the son is kind of like a science nerd. He's into horror movies, and he doesn't talk.
Yeah, no, he's nonverbal, which is fine. Nonverbal's fine. His name's Spike, by the way. The daughter's name's Stella. The son's name is Spike. And then we just have mom and dad Tinklemeister.
Yeah. And so then the family ends up singing a song about Spike.
We're waiting for Spike.
Yeah. So waiting for him to start speaking again. Apparently he did speak at one time, and they kind of say like he was struck by lightning, and since then he's not spoken. Which is
weird because later on they walk it back.
Yeah, it's like a completely different explanation later. So I don't know if but later, like here I think it's like the family just like hypothesizing what they think's going on, and then later we'll get like the real explanation.
Right. Which I dig it. Spike's my kind of people.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. So the monster, we see the monsters like they're up on the roof of the family's house, and they've got a plan, which starts with they hack into the family's cable box and just start showing VHSs of their old Universal movies, basically.
Right. Well, they basically like tie a video cassette recorder or player into their video feed somehow.
Yeah. And like the family they're just like enjoying the movies. They're not really scared, but it doesn't seem to be going well. And then Wolf tries to lower Frank down on a pulley into the window, but he manages to drop him. He like puts a big hole in the ground.
Right. There's
a bluebird that's like flapping around all of them the whole time, which I guess is again like they're so not scary that like birds aren't even bothered by them.
Right. They just don't consider them.
And in fact, then Dracula tries to scare the bird away and ends up smashing the VCR in the process.
Well, they do make you think that he bludgeoned the bird to death until the bird just flies up and lands on his head.
Yeah, and so then we see the kids are like, "Man, those movies were funny. Those were really great." And the dad's like, "Those used to be scary. When When I was growing up, we were afraid of those.
Oh yeah. Well, now Dracula has a new plan, or Drac has a new plan. He's going to be Ed McMonster, and the Tinklemeisters are going to win this lottery that no one else has played for, and that they haven't even entered.
Yeah.
So more reference to the the
Publishers Clearinghouse.
Yeah. People say that he wasn't on there. Bullshit. I know. Even this movie says he was. No.
Yeah. And so, they announced that the Tinklemeisters have won, and they're getting a trip to a castle in Eastern Europe.
Fair enough.
So then we cut to them, like, all in a plane.
Well, let's talk about, like, of course we have Frankenstein pulling up and letting the family in, and he's their chauffeur. But I do want to... I stopped you because I wanted to make the joke about Flappy Drac. Because, as they're leaving, Dracula turns into a bat, leaves the wolf alone, and flies off without him. So, all that for a bad Flappy Drac joke. Ah, damn it.
Yeah, so then we got the family. They're in a plane by themselves. Frankenstein and the Wolfman are flying the plane, and they hit a little bit of turbulence, which causes Frankenstein's head to burst through the roof of the plane, and somehow that doesn't just completely depressurize the cabin.
Right. But he does get a charge out of it as he gets struck by lightning.
Yeah, and so then the lightning does cause, things to get a little worse, but they manage to land without without losing anything, and then they take the family in a carriage to the castle.
Yeah, I thought when the carriage pulls up, the driver looked like he was headless, because it's from the top down, and I just saw red. And I'm like, oh, they actually have a headless driver, then why are these people not realizing their driver's headless? And then, the next scene, he's just a normal guy with a red top hat. For some reason. Don't know. Okay. Don't do that to me. Don't promise me a headless carriage driver.
And as they're like getting to the castle, the angry mob is like outside, kind of like protesting, but they just kind of go past them and head inside.
We also get a couple of wolves that try to stop them, but it doesn't go out how the wolves planned. They just get ran over by the carriage.
And so then once the family gets inside, like we're right away seeing, like the dad is like already on the verge of getting scared. There's like, there's a sarcophagus that kind of keeps opening and closing a little bit, and there's a creaky sound, and the dad's like, what was that? And the kids are like, Dad, there's all kind of, it's a house settling, or it's, it's nothing. You're worrying too much. So like he's clearly going to be the easy mark here. But then we get like Wolf popping his head through paintings to spy on everybody.
Yeah, get Dad a little bit more.
Yeah, he's like, his scare kind of is escalating. Like you can tell it's coming. Then we get Dracula sneaking up behind Mom, who's brushing her teeth, and Dad comes in and sees Dracula behind his wife and is like, honey, there's, and she looks in the mirror and doesn't see anything because, vampire, she doesn't see him in the mirror. Right. So then Dracula leaves and goes to try to scare the kids, and they are, or no, the kids see Frankenstein first. And he's trying to scare them, and they're just like, hey, can you take our picture?
Right. And they just basically use him to, they're like, oh, he's a photographer, yeah.
And he keeps like hurting himself with the camera, like the lens, or like it extends out and pokes him in the eye, and just, kind of silly, like little, pratfall kind of gags with the camera. Yeah,
so at this point, Dad's a wreck. Like, he's seen a vampire, he's seen a werewolf. What could possibly go wrong as he, like, goes looking for the kids?
So he bumps into the werewolf again, right?
No, Frankenstein.
Oh, is it Frank? Okay. So he sees that, faints. So we've got 1 down, 3 to go. And then we've got the kids in a science lab, and they think it's an arcade. So they start just kind of pressing buttons and everything. And so Frankenstein had gone to like rest, I guess, after all the trouble with them earlier. He gets like electrocuted, wakes up, and somehow they manage to like hit enough buttons to where like they have remote control power over Frankenstein.
Well, they don't just have remote control power over Frankenstein. They also have remote control power over all the random monster parts.
Yeah. So they like they're facing off. So Spike has a joystick for Frankenstein, and then it's just a bunch of random like hovering like limbs and heads and stuff.
Right.
So they're like facing off, and obviously Frankenstein is much stronger than a bunch of just stray parts. So they're like, okay, you got me, but next time I'm gonna be the Frankenstein. That's the better monster.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. In our monster fighter, it is Frankenstein who will always win. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but like it seems like Frankenstein actually kind of had fun doing that. Like as the kids are leaving, he's
because the parts come back and they're like they go after the kids, and he's like, "Oh no, you got one more round with me, baby."
But yeah, he's definitely like kind of bummed that like he still can't scare them. So then we see Mom cleaning,
right,
and Dracula tries to sneak up on her.
Right. We also only have 1 hour left. By the way, we skipped it because at the beginning when they first came into the castle, they had 3 hours left. So in that time, they've wasted 2 of their hours, and they only have 1 left to go.
And this definitely doesn't go well. So the mom she's vacuuming, she's singing, or I don't know if she's singing or like listening. She's kind of dancing, and there's like a song playing that is
the heebie-jeebie tango.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she's like dancing around and vacuuming. She doesn't hear or see Dracula, and she keeps like bumping into him, knocking him around, hitting him with the vacuum, just kind of more, kind of silly physical comedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she beats the snot out of him.
Yeah, she vacuums up his cape at one point and knocks him down and everything. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the kids have bumped into Wolf, and they, being children of a dog groomer, they're like, oh there's a stinky dog.
Right.
Yeah. So they decide, like, we're going to get this dog cleaned up and in shape. Dad'd be so proud of us.
Right. And they proceed to cut him like a poodle. Poor guy.
Yeah. And then we cut away to Mom, who is walking through the dark castle after cleaning everything. And she bumps into Frankenstein, and finally, that's the last straw for her. Mm-hmm. She screams in terror and faints.
All right, with probably about half an hour, we've got 2 down, 2 to go.
Yeah. And at that point, we have the prosecutor, Grim Reaper, who's getting an update and is upset to learn that half the family is scared. And he's like, we can't lose this case. So I've got to interfere in this.
Right. And well, he's like, I can't lose one more case this millennia. And I'm like, dude, it's the year 2000. It just started. Or it could have been 99 and it just finished. But still, the point is, he was like, if I lose one more, I won't be able to practice again.
Right. So he's got a plan, but then we cut away, and we've got the kids with the fully groomed wolf, and they're gonna try to find their dad now. And while they're kind of looking around, Dracula manages to sneak up on the daughter and scare her. Mm-hmm. But still, nothing works on Spike. He
even tries to hypnotize Spike.
Yeah, and Spike pulls out his own hypnotism glasses and like hypnotizes Dracula back, basically.
Right. He pulls reverse Uno, like I like to say. Yeah.
And then he tries to play fetch with Wolf.
Succeeds and Wolf throws him out the window effectively.
Yeah. And then he's got like one of those like paddle ball game things, with like the rubber ball and the elastic string, and he keeps like bonking Frankenstein in the face with it. So yeah, nobody has anything on Spike.
No, he's the winner. But so of course Dracula then shows up and he's like, "All right, kid, we've got 3 of you scared, but we just can't scare Spike. So please work with us."
Yeah.
We're gonna
he basically just like begs. He gives him the sob story.
Right. Well, his sob story is the worst sob story. Like, I have no pity for him because obviously this Drac was born as a vampire, had a very attractive vampire-like mom, and it's interesting that this is an animated movie and they're talking about him breastfeeding, but he's like, I didn't want to breastfeed. I went straight for the jugular.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. And so then, like, the whole trio breaks into song, and they sing "It Was So Good When We Were Bad."
Right, which it sounds like a Mighty Mighty Boss Tone song.
Yeah, it is interesting. This has, like, a really kind of diverse, like, you had the Monster Mash, which was similar to the original. It had a little bit more, like, modern production value, and then we had, like, the tango kind of song, and now this is more like punk rocking kind of song.
Yeah. And we give him more of a punk rock song later.
Yeah. But, so the family is all kind of trying to comfort them after they sing the song. And they're like, yeah, you're still legends, but, Spike's he grew up on the more modern monsters. They're soulless and without history and charm.
And they're created by toy companies. Ouch! Damn!
Yeah, and the wolf just breaks into some some in-depth analysis, and he's like, he says they were created by toy companies rather than arising spontaneously from folklore and mythology, reflecting Jungian archetypes filtered through the collective unconscious. Damn. And everybody just stares at him in dead silence, and he's like, what?
Which is funny though, because a lot of the cartoons at the time were this thing. That's what they were. Versus I really don't think you could call Freddy, Jason, Chucky, or the Xenomorph created by toy companies. They were absolutely exploited by them. But they weren't created by them at all.
Yeah. But this whole side of folklore and everything is the more classic monster thing. So right. It's a nice little analysis there. We don't get much time with that because there's a knock at the door.
And who should it be?
It's our three modern monsters.
Right. Once again, Freddy D. Spaghetti, Chicky, and the Alien Eater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird.
So they sort of attack, and one thing I thought was a really funny sort of not a reference, but now sort of as a reverse reference, is that Freddy throws some of his snakes at Wolf, and they eat he has an hourglass on a watch.
Right.
And he's like, hey, I got that for my bar mitzvah.
Right?
The good old 30 Rock werewolf bar mitzvah song.
Yeah. Maybe this is what inspired it. Maybe we have a 30 Rock writer in here that we didn't see.
Yeah, could be. But so we've got the family and the classic monsters trying to run away. They end up bumping into the pitchfork mob and have to turn back, and then they sort of run over the modern monsters as they are trying to escape.
Well, Freddy D. Spaghetti also tries to scare him off with a little bit of his ragout sauce.
Yeah. And so finally, the family ends up going to hide in a bedroom. They block the door, and then, the monsters are like, oh, this is perfect. We've got a secret door. So they get into the wardrobe, which is an elevator, and they escape to, a basement lair.
Well, yeah, and first there's this little bit where they keep hitting the button and it doesn't work. And they're like, what's wrong with it? Of course, Spike is the one who's like, it's disconnected. It's cut. Well, he points to it. He doesn't say anything.
Yeah, so they get it plugged in, they escape, and then we get these bits where Freddy D. Spaghetti is kind of Freddy and also Jason, but then we get this stuff with Chicky where Chicky is also kind of Freddy-ish.
Right.
In that she's got this remote control and she can kind of press buttons and make people sort of experience dream-like situations, basically.
I wonder if Chicky is kind of meant to be more of a mix of Leprechaun and Chucky.
That could be.
Yeah. The more magical... Chicky is obviously more magical than the rest of them.
Yeah. So at first they're she kind of teleports them into Jaws, basically. They're swimming with sharks. And then she hits the button again and they're playing basketball, but with snakes.
Right. And we get the great reference by Wolf, I believe. Why did it have to be snakes for you Indiana Jones fans?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so then Freddy is trying to pick the lock with his utensil fingers.
Right.
And we get the family sort of trying to help the monsters, kind of get them pumped back up to fight the modern monsters.
Yeah,
so,
it's basically Spike upgrading all the monsters.
Yeah, Spike glues in Dracula's dentures.
Super fixidant for the vampire.
Yeah. And then Spike and the dad help kind of fix up the werewolf's fur to make him look more, invigorated.
Right. It's almost like they just going back to the Rogaine thing. It's he's a mixture of a Wolfman and Samson in that his hair is the source of all of his power.
Yeah. And then they kind of zap Frankenstein to get him powered up with more lightning. And then Spike has some sort of potion that makes everything just turn black and white.
Right, when it gets hit by either moonlight or lightning or both. They call it lightning, or they call it moonlight, but it definitely was lightning.
And so somehow, like, that kind of gives the classic monsters like a home court advantage, basically.
Mm-hmm. And you know what we get after that? Well, one, we actually get an Exorcist musical sting, if you were paying attention.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not going to do that. Almost Tubular Bells, almost. But you know what we get after that? We get a monster mash! I was going to say monster fight, but that you know, the mash makes sense.
Yeah, and so we get like Frankenstein facing off against the alien. Mm-hmm. He like stomps the ground, which causes the alien's teeth to like chatter and break. Mm-hmm. Then the wolf howls, which like he howls so hard that it like knocks off Chicky's wig and sort of like causes Chicky to sort of fall apart.
Right, and kind of knocks her remote like out of her hand or destroys it too, right?
Yeah, and then Dracula. Because
eats Freddy.
Yeah, because Dracula has the power of sucking, I guess. He like slurps up all of Freddy's spaghetti, and he just kind of like falls. He's just like clothes and a mask that just like kind of hit the ground.
I don't know why, but that was the funniest line I've ever heard. Yeah. Oh gosh.
And
eats
Dracula's
Freddy's spaghetti. All right.
And Dracula's like, you know, he's happy that the pasta didn't have garlic.
Right, of course, you know, that would give him a tummy ache.
Yeah.
Also, though, that spaghetti's corrosive. We've seen it melt multiple things. How did it just not melt Dracula's inside?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
And so right as he does that, the clock strikes midnight, and so, you know, they weren't able to scare all four of the family, but they did defeat the modern monsters.
But they won the
battle,
it's kind of
like
they lost the war.
Yeah. So then we cut away to like the family. They're back home, and their TV is for some reason broadcasting the trial of these monsters,
which is wild because they literally call attention to that. They're like, "Why is this just showing us the trial of the monsters?" Yeah. Okay.
Which this definitely was the time when, like, suddenly, like,
Meta.
You know, court stuff was on TV a lot. I mean, this, I guess, was several years after the OJ trial, but, you know, the OJ trial did sort of, like, kickstart this whole thing of, like, you know, trials being popular to watch on TV.
Oh, and also the 24-hour news cycle, which that's beneficial. That was a great thing that happened.
Yeah. But so in the trial, you know, the Reapers, like, they failed to scare the whole family, and the judge is like, yeah, but they scared some of their own, which is even harder to do. So I'm going to call in a surprise witness, Spike.
Dun, dun, dun!
Yeah. And then we find out that, you know, Spike is a horror expert, and he can just suddenly talk.
Right. The only reason he didn't, though, was because he was really scared of horror comics. What?
Yeah, he was scared speechless. And so, like, we find out that, like, you know, Freddy Spaghetti, Chicky, and the Alien Eater are not from movies. They're from comics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was so scared that he just went nonverbal. But then he found, you know, when those horror comic monsters, they turned to putty when they met the real monsters.
That's right.
And he says, now that I've, you know, interacted with both, I prefer a monster with passion,
not just
Parmesan.
All right, that was a pretty good one.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, you know, he's like, that's the thing is, like, you know, these classic monsters, they know when to scare and when to be friends. And, you know, obviously that's sort of the whole premise of what we're doing here is, like, you know, Frankenstein can be scary, and it could also... be these heartwarming stories about, you know, a monster trying to connect and everything.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't see Freddy being friends with anybody.
No.
Jason, I feel like may be friendly towards kids because he definitely has a Frankenstein thing going on, as we mentioned, in times past. And Chucky's kind of in the same boat as Freddy.
Yeah,
but going back to I don't mean to pimp the new show, but he acts friendly. He can at least act friendly, even though he's definitely not.
The new Chucky show is really good. I've been really enjoying it.
Yep.
But yeah, so with Spike's testimony, the judge rules that the classic trio are reinstated into the Ghoul Guild for all eternity. So then we cut to the family, who were all kind of surprised that their son was just in court and they didn't realize it.
Right.
But the monsters all come to visit, and they're like, so as part of this whole thing, we were given our own movie studio.
Right, the judge gave them a movie studio. What judge has that power?
And they're like, we're thinking about making our story into an animated musical. I wonder if that would do well.
Yeah, well, I guess it didn't, but it was still fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're going to be busy at the movie studio, so while we're gone, you want to, live in our castle.
Yeah.
Because we won't be able to take care of it. And they're like, yeah, that'll be great. And so they meet Yorick / and the mom's like, we can fatten up the dog. But the family, even though, they're going to fatten up the dog, but the family's on a diet.
Right.
They're going to be cutting down on pasta.
Right. Well, also, to be fair, most of the family's plump anyway. They have exaggerated portions or proportions.
Yeah.
So it's okay. Well, that's not fun, but yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it's definitely a 2000s thing for, not that it's not still a thing to, lean into dieting and stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, they definitely kind of made this family, physically very, classic, or, typical Midwestern and not, Hollywood people.
Right.
But then, so of course they're going to need to diet now.
Yeah. But hey, guess what? The family also apparently has eased tensions between the monsters and the villagers, because they've created a Monster Mash park.
Yeah.
A theme park.
Yeah, so the whole castle has been turned into this theme park, and they figured out a way to balance scares and fun. So, there's scary rides, there's fun things, depending on what you're into. But we also see that the modern monsters are now also working at the park. Yeah, and people are kind of having fun with them too. Yeah, they're not scary anymore either, which feels like the truth. These monsters have now sort of been around so long that they're not as horrifying anymore. We've got Chucky, the show that plays on the Sci-Fi Channel on TV, and all these characters over time. That's the thing, is over time people get comfortable with them, and that's why horror always has to escalate, and the old things become familiar and fun and less terrifying.
Right. Yeah, because, I mean, that's just the cycle. That's how it goes, right?
Yeah, so we've got these guys that are going to be replaced by, Jigsaw and, whatever else is,
Hostile, basically torture porn.
Yeah. And so then we cut to the credits, which are, as we kind of hinted at, variations of the Monster Mash. Mm-hmm. And we have it's pretty great. You've got the director sort of complaining over it. So it starts and it's sort of the traditional musically version of Monster Mash, but it's being sung by almost like a Candyman voice. It's a very deep, gravelly voice. And the director's and the director's I don't know who decided this was a bad call. This doesn't work. We needed something different.
I know this is what I wanted, but it's not working.
Yeah, and then we cut to a twangy country thing with a female singer that's kind of Dolly Parton-ish in a way.
It's weird that one actually kind of works.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah. And then we get another punk rock, Sum 41, screaming variation at the end.
Yeah. And the director's not liking any of those. And then it just kind of fades out from that, and we just get, for the last half of the credits, it's just clips of the other songs from the movie. Mm-hmm. And then at the very end of the credits, we just get the original version of the Monster Mash, the Bobby Boris Pickett version.
Yeah, it's like a trailer almost, with the Universal movies or monster movies interspersed between the animation.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's clips of this movie we've seen, but with clips from the classic actual live action films.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of edited to be dancing. So you've got like still
creature.
or like shots. Yeah, it's the creature especially. There's him like walking forward, and then they like rewind it backwards, so it looks like he's kind of doing like dance steps.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and then they've got like some like Romani women dancing on a table from probably the Wolfman movie. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but various clips of dancing or clips made to look like dancing. It's just a fun little sort of music video basically for the Monster Mash.
Yep.
So that was a nice way to sort of wrap the movie up. But yeah, overall, it's not like mind blowing, but it's a fun little movie.
Yeah, yeah, just like you said, I definitely understand why it doesn't have a following nowadays, but it would be something nice to go back to if you can get a hold of it.
Yeah, and I think so. I have a DVD of this, but this is how how much respect this movie has. It's on a dual disc with a Halloween episode of Alvin and the Chipmunks. Ooh. And a couple Halloween episodes of the Archie cartoon.
Yeah, because of DIC. DIC owned all of those properties, yeah.
Yeah,
Ouch.
exactly.
Ouch.
So that's pretty, as far as I know, that's the only way you can get this is, scour eBay and find one. I found one for, I think like $5 or something like that. But yeah, it's, I feel like it's a good, like family friendly sort of like entry level, horror thing. You get like the classic monsters, you get the more modern monsters, which was kind of fun. You don't often see like parodies of those monsters, especially not these two streams of horror kind of mixing together.
We definitely don't have a Freddy, Jason, and Chucky versus Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein's monster, which honestly would be pretty amazing. It would at least be something to watch. Yeah,
I would be down for that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, in this case, you kind of, sort of get that in a way, and it's fun.
Mm-hmm. Definitely give it a shot. You know what, though, Anthony? We've dealt with a lot of monsters. We've dealt with a lot of villains. You know what I think we need?
What's that?
I think we need a hero. I think we need Van Helsing.
Yeah, so we've had some sort of mashups of monsters here, and we're gonna kind of continue that.
Yep.
I feel like this is a movie that I've just recently, in the past year or so, heard like inklings of people sort of reevaluating it. I don't think it was very well respected at the time.
No,
but
it
I
was
think
bad. It was rough.
Yeah. But I think people are kind of seeing it for what it was and finding the fun in it, and I don't think that I have seen this since I saw it in theaters, so I am excited to revisit it.
You know what? Same here. I was one of the first people to see this movie just because Hugh Jackman was such a big name at the time with the release of the X-Men movies and, also horror. We have a Van Helsing, so I'm there for it. So, yeah, I'm ready to reappraise this movie.
Yeah, we'll see how we feel about it after next week. But yeah, right now I'm excited to check it out.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, Anthony, where can they find us?
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd at The Frankencast. You can find us over on YouTube. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. And you can find us over on patreon.com/thefrankencast. And we definitely would love to see you all over there. I was thinking about it, I don't, we've talked about like, don't feel obligated if you can't afford that and stuff, obviously. But also like, if you feel like you're missing out on this other half of the show, there's no shame in like jumping in, paying for a month, binging through everything and then dipping back out. We won't begrudge anybody that wants to do that. We love for people to hear those. So if that's, what you can do and afford and want to dig in like that, feel free. Absolutely.
Yeah, and absolutely. Once again, we always say this, but just to reiterate, the monetary aspect is always nice, but we definitely like the interaction. So if you interact with us on any of the socials, that's just as good. Let the algorithm know we're worth your time. And that's
absolutely
even better.
100%.
All right. Do we got anything else?
I think that covers it.
All right. Well, in that case, to be continued.
episode. The Freaking is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Freaking or send us a letter at thefreakingcast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.